Thank you for taking a moment to check out the first episode of our Technology Spotlight Q&A series. My name is Ralph Moreno, and I've been a consultant in the healthcare safety net supply chain for the last 12 years. In my short yet concentrated career, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the most innovative companies and had the privilege of providing value to hundreds of safety net clinics and hospitals around the country. With my new organization, MedPATH Advisory Partners, we get to continue the mission of increasing patient access to healthcare by seeking out and partnering with the solutions and technologies that increase financial resources for the safety net healthcare institutions that are the backbone of our community. In the current climate, our healthcare infrastructure is being challenged in ways we have never had to face, at least in my career. This is forcing healthcare providers to innovate on the fly, learn quickly, and become as resourceful as they can. In the wake of all this, it comes as no surprise that I believe leveraging technology integration, interoperability, and automation will be key drivers in this digital transformation. The purpose of our technology series is to become an outlet to shine a spotlight on the companies that we believe are taking part in this transformation movement and to share my experiences with connected stakeholders and those interested in learning. Our first guest and spotlight organization is the CEO of Teracrunch, Tapan Bhatt. Teracrunch delivers a suite of data integration tools using their backbone machine learning engine. Using their platform Socratez, Teracrunch enables real-time data-driven decision-making using AI and machine learning to put your existing data to work for you. When I first engaged with Teracrunch about a year ago, I would have considered myself knowledgeable about AI, but I learned quickly that understanding AI and putting it into practice were not the same. Through my interactions with Tapan and Teracrunch, I learned quickly the process of how to isolate a practical use case, identify the required data variables, and to develop the desired output required to solve any problem. For those listening who find themselves in the same boat about AI, I think you'll find this interview to be educational and practical. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Tapan for being gracious with his time and working with me through our first episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Without further ado, here's my interview with Tapan Bhatt, CEO of Teracrunch. How are you doing this morning, Tapan?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for taking the time, and I appreciate having this conversation with you this morning.
Oh, me as well. I do appreciate you carving the time out. I know you're very busy, but I think this is going to be valuable on both fronts. So if you wouldn't mind, can you just give the audience a background, your background, and where you're coming from?
Sure. Education-wise, I'm an electrical engineer, have an MBA. I've been in the business for last 22 years now. Majority of my career I've spent in startups. So I've either been an early stage equity partner in startups or have been a product visionary for that startup. Started my career with a VC firm, Sequoia Capital, in the Bay Area, and then kind of moved on to their portfolio companies and moved on to Boston after about 10 years or so. Spent 8-9 years in Boston based companies, and then moved to Kansas City because of wife. She's from here. And we always had a base here in Kansas City while I was moving, just because she was here at that point. We were dating and then got engaged and then finally married. And she didn't give me a choice. So Kansas City was the place for us to be. So moved here about 8 years ago and decided to start Teracrunch pretty much just when I moved. So the company is about 8 years old as well.
Awesome. And so Teracrunch is the, can you just elaborate on Teracrunch so that everybody can kind of understand exactly what it is you started?
Sure. So Teracrunch is a solutions provider in the world of artificial intelligence. So we help companies make smarter decisions by providing AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning solutions by leveraging our experts, our experience, our technology and methodologies, which we call as Socratez. And then the second thing we do is we automate manual processes using AI-driven RPA technology, robotic process automation.
So an example, well, I think you're probably going to say this, but can you give me just a quick example of like a specific manual process that, would be perfect like for automating?
Sure. Think of manual processes as tasks that human beings, employees, go in every day and perform, whether it's entering data in computer systems or some kind of a form, or moving information from one place to another place and then analyzing it and then shipping it into a third-party system. Whatever it is that humans are doing on a repetitive basis, on a daily, weekly basis, is what can be automated through robotic process automation. So think of the technology as a program that's just mimicking human actions, but it's just converting all the human actions into a program. So the program can do the exact same thing, but much quicker and without any errors.
So,
And the goal behind RPA is not to remove human beings from the process. Is just to make sure that human beings are involved in doing something that is more powerful, something that brings higher value for the company than doing repetitive, mundane tasks.
awesome. That's a great, and that really helps a lot. So, what makes you guys? Are you guys just a solution provider? Do you guys just implement, or kind of walk me through your guys' approach?
Sure. So think of Teracrunch as one of the best options for organizations when they're looking for uh, a team or experts that almost can work as an extension of their team, as a part of their team. So we're not a typical vendor where we go to a customer and say, here's a list of items that we do for you. What we essentially have done is we've taken a different approach in how we build custom solutions for customers. In that, we bring everything that is required to convert raw data and potentially a business problem into a full-blown solution in about 8 weeks. And the way we do that is we have people, processes, technology. In terms of people, we've got PhD data scientists and engineers with affiliations with Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and NASA. So some of the best brain power in the country that, these folks are researchers, they've authored books, they've been in this industry for a while now, and are considered as thought leaders in this space. So we bring in some of the best experts that exist out there. On top of that, we're also bringing tools that are required to do custom solution development in RPA and AI. And then we also have proprietary methodology in how we actually do these things. So think of this people, processes, and tools that we bring as almost a system. So the way we're different is we're really bringing a system that's proven and that has been applied again and again. We've built over 200 plus solutions so far and counting every week. So we're essentially a system that you're bringing to work as an extension of your team. So the way we get engaged is we identify a business problem that you want to solve. Based on that business problem, we take a look at your sample data just to make sure that that problem is viable. And we do that for free. And if the problem is viable, we then provide a detailed solutions proposal that says, here's what we do, here's the output, here's what you will get as an output, here's how you can use it and start making impact on your business, here's the time and cost and so forth. Right? So at that point, we get engaged, and within about 8 weeks or so, we deploy a solution so that they can start testing. They can do a pilot, they can do a small test of the solution to prove the results. And if the results are great, they can then expand slowly. So whatever they want to do and however they want to test it, we can support that. Then once it's deployed, it's all cloud-based, so we can maintain and manage. And finally, as they see the results and as they experience the power of this, we can continually learn from that and improve the underlying AI behind it. So we're constantly improving it. We're constantly making changes and adding new features and bells and whistles as the business evolves.
Awesome.
So think of, like I said, we are truly an extension of the team. We're working right from day zero all the way till you're in the grave.
And one thing that I think I just want to add to that I think was important, and from my own experience, was when I first thought of AI, and it seems incredibly just expansive with where it can go. And I think one of the things that your team did, you're the scientist or the data scientist that I was working with specifically with you in terms of the outputs, was helping me kind of fine tune exactly what that output needed to look like, because I think that could be a big challenge for anybody, really trying to identify exactly what that specific output needs to look like. Is that a fair? I mean, is that something you see common?
Absolutely. I think there are a couple of common things. Yes, output is one of them. It's very tough for customers to define and envision what the output should look like. So we work in an iterative manner. We give them a first pass output, they review it, they provide us feedback, we go back and make any changes, and then we give them the output again. And they again provide any feedbacks and we incorporate any changes. So there's a lot of back and forth, and we get to a point where they get the output to an exact uh, phase that they had envisioned. And oftentimes when they start using it, they then realize they want to see something else. And then even after it's in the post deployment situation, we're constantly making improvement and changes. So that's one thing. We've also seen an important thing that to mention here is that when a use case or a problem is defined, and then as you start working on a solution, and as you collaborate and as you start having conversation, oftentimes the target changes, which means you might think you want to do X, but then as you get into it, you feel like, you know what, it's better if you do Y. And therefore, we constantly pivot as well if required. And we've seen oftentimes, because in this world, you can define a problem, can define a solution, and then as you start building it, you oftentimes come to a point where you feel like, okay, I wish I had thought about this, but it's impossible to do that. And that's the reason why we are very happy to pivot as and when the requirement pops up. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're truly an extension of our customer's team, where we're potentially pivoting the use case and the problem, we're pivoting the output as required, and we're constantly making changes and making it collaborative.
Awesome. Well, in that too, I think the challenge that I kind of struggled with is almost having too much data, I felt, and how do I get to the right fields or the right data elements to, like you said, get you from the input to the right output. Can you talk a little bit about how your team actually can help get from all this massive amount of data that's been mined and actually bringing it down into something that's meaningful?
Yeah, so all organizations have stored data and information for operational reasons, and not specifically for analytics, or definitely not AI. And I do feel organizations sometimes find AI to be such a daunting task, primarily because a lot of companies have used AI as a marketing jargon, and therefore it's been used very loosely. In real world, AI is really a means to an end. Think of AI as teaching a machine how to think like human, teaching a machine how to calculate like human, teaching a machine how to process like human beings, but everything at extremely fast pace, everything on a much higher scale and without any errors. So that's really what AI is. And it's doing a bunch of mathematical calculations, right? Algorithms and so forth. But I think it has become a daunting thing for organizations, just because many people don't get it, or if they do get it, they feel it's expensive, it's time consuming to deploy these solutions and so forth. So the way we make it simple, and again, we strongly believe, and it's something in the DNA for our company, to make all this complicated simple. So what we do is we typically take a look at sample data against the problem, and then we are assessing if the sample data is statistically enough for us to solve a given problem. And if it is, then we go ahead and give a thumbs up, and if if the client wants us to move forward with a statement of work or a proposal of a solution, we do that. But essentially, data is almost, sitting in different silos. So our job is to take data from different silos, mix it together, prepare it, make it ready for analysis, and just do an assessment and make sure if it's enough. Is it viable to solve a problem? And I think that's something that organizations sometimes are not sure about, especially because they don't have the expertise and the tools to do that kind of a viability assessment. We come across organizations that feel they have the right data, and then sometimes they don't. And we also come across organizations when they feel they don't have the right data, but when we review it, we feel they have great data for that specific problem.
Awesome. Thank you. And so with identifying, right, especially with, I think, the target market that, me specifically am more interested in is the big data, right? The hubs, the ones that can make the better decisions based on the aggregation of, data on a whole. And I do understand that there is an absolute use case for the internal use and the specific entities being able to take their own internal data to better use. For the purposes of this discussion and talking about Socratez, which I want to jump into in just a second. Can you talk to something that you and I kind of you had kind of educated me on, and that was the term of quality and quantity with data. And in our offline conversations, we had talked about data administrators. So as these aggregators of these massive amounts of data, can you kind of explain why somebody like a TPA would be such an optimal use case for identifying a problem, and how that relates to quality versus quantity when you mention that?
Sure. Oftentimes big data means you have to have a lot of data, and that's a misconception. Big data necessarily is not about a lot of data. It's also about enough number or enough variables in a given data set to solve a specific problem, right? So we've seen a lot of data with not enough variables or quality within that data to solve a problem. And we've seen not big data, but with a very rich amount of variables in a given data set to be able to solve a problem. So I think, again, it's a myth out there that we have to have a lot of data. But more than the quantity of the data, the quality is important. So what we oftentimes like to ensure is the quality and the quantity, because we want to make sure statistically it's significant enough as well, but it doesn't have to be that big. So we ensure the quality and the quantity is there within a given data set for solving that specific problem. That's the most important thing. You cannot just look at the data and say, okay, is this good or bad? Then you take a look at the data from a specific lens of a use case. So if there's a problem, you want to see, can this data help me solve my problem or not? And that's what we do. And I think in terms of, to answer your second question, in terms of TPAs, they are absolutely, they're data aggregators and hubs of data. They're sitting on large volumes of data, and therefore we believe they're perfectly poised to take significant advantage of AI-driven solutions. And because they've got the quantity and the quality that we believe they have, they are poised to solve different problems that they're facing right now. And we can talk about specific problems here in a little bit, but they're definitely poised to solve quite a few different business challenges and problems proactively instead of reactively, because I believe a lot of them today, in fact, a majority of them today, are being reactive in their decision making. And they are making decisions after the fact and always trying to get ahead of the curve, but that's just not going to be possible if they do it after the fact. So I think there's a huge potential for them to change the dynamics here in their decision making by making proactive decisions powered by AI.
Yep. And one of the things I think is important in that regard is that they're already solving a problem, right? They wouldn't be out there as a solution provider if they didn't see a problem that they were already solving for a customer base. So I see AI as just a mechanism to further add value to their existing tool sets, but also to give them a new set of tool sets. And that kind of leads me into the, my next kind of where I want to spend some time, and that's, Socratez. So can you explain to me and to everybody listening, what is Socratez? Is it a platform, a solution? Is it a bit of both?
Yeah, we built Socratez not because we wanted to build something fancy. We built Socratez because we couldn't find anything, and we were hoping to find something ready-made in the market, or maybe just take a few things from the market, mix it together, and build solutions using it. But we couldn't find a bunch of tools and technology with some powerful methodology built into it to build custom solutions in the AI world. So what we decided to do was build our own proprietary set of tools that blends the best research, best-in-class technology and techniques that enables our data scientists to build custom turnkey solutions with high level of accuracy and speed. So that's why we built Socratez. So think of Socratez as a bunch of tools and methodology that improves development speed and efficiency, reduces human errors in building these solutions, increases accuracy. And one very important thing is it provides transparency. So it basically, since we control it, since we have our own proprietary tools and methodology, we know exactly what's happening behind the decision-making criteria. We know why an algorithm is doing certain things. And I think that provides transparency to us. And if we know what's happening, we can communicate that to the other stakeholders as well. So Socratez was really designed to bring in transparency because existing tools are black boxes. Whether you go to Amazon or Microsoft or Google or others, a lot of them are black boxes because they're their tools. They're providing their technology. And therefore, you don't know what's really happening behind the scenes, and there's not a whole lot of control. So one of the key reasons why we wanted to do what we did was building that transparency. So that's what Socratez brings in. It's just development efficiency and speed, reduction in human errors, and improves accuracy and provides transparency. So at the end of the day, our team uses this to build solutions for our clients.
Well, and when you talk about the big data, the big AI vendors out there, and when I use the word big AI vendor, I'm using just any big enterprise company that's going to, like you say, offer this black box solution. I think what I've seen with Socratez and your team is that it gives you almost the feel of like you have your own development team. It is a true partnership. So I think that in itself blends it well with the transparency and control aspect of how do you build a solution that truly gets you what you need without having to work through some of the bureaucracies of a large organization that maybe not be tailored to get you to that custom solution. And with custom, I think this is a good opportunity. Being this is a pharmacy, it's a pharmacy discussion. With Socratez, what are examples of some, just that you see as some immediate use cases within the pharmacy supply chain in AI?
Sure. We'll make a point before we go into that specific subject. And just extending what you just said was, the large organizations typically, it takes them a lot of time and effort, and it's expensive for them to build solutions just because they're large. And compared to that, Teracrunch obviously is nimble and agile, and therefore we can move quickly, and we're very, very cost effective. So that's definitely huge value. But to your point, the second significant value here, and something that organizations are really craving, but they don't know that a Teracrunch-like company exists out there. But what they're really craving is a company that can be very transparent and collaborative, where they can feel, they're true partners and an extension of their team, and not really being a vendor. Because the word vendor means we're giving you a problem, you give us a solution, right? And in that transaction, the whole concept of close collaboration and transparency is gone. So that's what Teracrunch brings in. We're bringing that in the mix because that's what's required to make AI projects successful. And like I said earlier, we might start with defining a problem as X, but as you start diving into the project and start doing things and have this conversations going, you might feel like we want to pivot a little bit, or we might want to change then one or two things in the output here and there. And I think being the way our process just makes that more simple and much efficient as a result of that. So I just wanted to extend a little bit on that.
No, that was perfect. I appreciate that.
Going to your subject on the use cases that we provide for TPAs. I think that the biggest use case that we offer is around drug pricing, insurance reimbursements, regulatory responses. Because if you think about the issues here is, the pricing is constantly changing, and the payers are changing their goalposts constantly by changing their plans. And then there are other issues because of which this entire decision-making criteria around pricing has become very dynamic, and it's a constantly changing target. And I think because it is the way it is, we are perfectly poised to not only help them build a solution, but help them provide a solution that gives them the right actionable insights, right, that they can proactively use to keep ahead of the market.
One of the things I want to add to that, because I totally agree with you. One of the things I love about AI, now that I understand its application and actually its real case use, is the ability to iterate through multiple simulations and be able to identify what the potential best outcome is, but not do it in a manual fashion. Because I've had to do that constantly in all my past projects, engagements, where a decision is being made at a government level, or even at a private stakeholder level that has implications across the industry. And what it leads to is everybody, getting their analysts to the table and trying to run through all these scenarios manually to be able to say, okay, if drug X is going away, where's drug Y and Z? Or if they somehow slash our reimbursements, what is our best next alternative to continue to do the mission that we're trying to serve? So what I wanted to add to that is I just think that ability to simulate through scenarios, not after the fact, but knowing, okay, things are going to change. Let's just plug in a few scenarios here, and now we've got these outcomes at our disposal. Now, is that a fair way to explain it? Because I think that's how I see it.
Absolutely. I think, to your point, these TPAs are consuming huge amounts of data. And these data, as I said, the data sources are in different silos. So one of the things that AI is very, very effective on is taking data from different data sets, mixing it together, and then analyzing that information. So going back to the use cases, we can do predictive analytics for faster responses to changes in formulary pricing, right? Drug prices are different by contract. They're different constantly and changing, obviously, as well on a constant basis. So that one of the key things we can do is to do predictions or predictive analytics for faster responses in changes in this formula repricing. Anomaly detection with almost sudden changes in pricing and reimbursements that happens. That is probably a huge value proposition as well. More efficient prescription and pharmacy fulfillment opportunities. That's probably another value proposition here. And while we're doing this, we automate the whole thing, the whole process end to end, which means raw data comes in from a couple of different sources into this, call it for simplicity, call it AI engine, comes into this AI engine. AI engine mixes all this data, prepares it, analyzes it, and then throws out these insights on a fixed interval. It could be real time, it could be daily, weekly, whatever frequency makes sense, and in a specific output on a fixed interval. So whole process is automated end to end. So you're not lifting a finger and you're getting predictive insights on your fingertip every single day, or every single minute for that matter, if that's how you wanted to do it.
Right.
I think that's very, very powerful. That just changes how you're making your decisions on a day-to-day basis, and just keeps you ahead of the curve.
Well, and one thing too that I think is important when what you said about end to end is business intelligence versus artificial intelligence. I'd like to think of business intelligence gives you the information, but there's no action after the fact. And I think when you couple, the robotic, the RPA, and the decision making and that predictive decision making, I think that's really where it differentiates. And when I see it, I don't want to react to something and then have to figure out what the plan of attack after is. Having those automated tasks to say, well, we know that if it's going to be X, we do Y, and if it's going to be Y, we do Z. And that type of proactive decision making, I think it frees up the time of these analysts that I think spend more time doing the work than they do spending the time actually analyzing and making meaningful use of it.
Yeah, I think in my simple understanding, and again, BI versus AI, there's a huge difference between the two, including the underlying technology. Mm-hmm. But in terms of actual use, BI is a glorified report, right? In terms of a dashboard. And what it does is it's very informative, it's very applicable, and organizations definitely need that. But it's really for a business analyst or a business manager to review and then analyze and then take some insights from it, right? Whereas AI is driven to solve specific business problem, and the output coming out of AI is doing exactly that. It tells you where the problem is and what the insight is, so that you can take an action right away without spending a second on analyzing that information. You don't need to analyze the output. In AI, the output is designed to give you an actionable insight for a specific business problem. So you pretty much know what you need to do when you see that output.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And as far as, when we talk about Socratez, we talked about, typical engagements, but how do companies typically engage you guys? Is it you have a problem and you're offering it out, or do companies come to you with an idea, you come up with the problem? Can you just talk me through what that typical engagement looks like to better help kind of, understand?
Sure. So we do have a portfolio of pre-built solutions that we can configure and customize to clients' data and their business process. And then we have another offering that's for custom solutions development, which is where the client comes to us and says, hey, let's figure out how to scope this specific business problem or business area issues we've got. And in that case, we take a look at their sample data and understand their problem and try to scope it and then move forward with it that way. So think of us offering our capabilities in two different ways. One is custom solutions development, and then two is a pre-built portfolio of solutions that we bring to the table. And the typical engagement is identification of a problem or scope. We review sample data against the scope and make sure it's viable. We call it the viability assessment. We do that for free. And then after that's done, we provide a proposal that identifies the solution, the outputs, the frequencies, the timeline and cost and so forth. And most typically our deployments are done within 8 weeks. So from when we get the data, deployment is typically within 8 weeks. And at the end of the 8 weeks, they get the output that we had agreed on an automated basis. They can take that output and start making their business decisions in some form of a test or some form of a pilot. And then as they feel comfortable, they can start expanding from there. And we can support them in that expansion as they move forward.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate, I think the takeaway for me, every time I talk with you, I learn a little bit more about AI. And for me as a consultant, I need to always have the most kind of up-to-date cutting edge technologies, but not just the technology, but actually the abilities to implement. And I think you've helped with that tremendously. Would it be possible, can I, obviously share your information just to anybody that is that wants some education, or are there resources that you guys can provide if somebody did have questions about where do I get started with AI? I have an idea about, a potential AI solution. What would it cost? Am I allowed to basically saying, can I give that information out for somebody to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And again, it could be just educational. It could be tire kicking. It could be, hey, we don't even know if this is possible. Or it could be something very specific to talk shop. So whatever the scenario may be, we are very happy to help. I would say, though, a lot of companies have business problems or can improve their decision making, make their decision making smarter, or can automate a lot of manual processes. But they're not sure that it's possible to achieve all that much faster and efficiently through technologies like AI and robotic process automation. So what I urge people to do is, again, not feel daunted by these buzzwords, AI and RPA, but to take a little bit of deep dive into their problem and see how the solutions can help their problem in a very efficient way. Because that's really why AI is becoming so popular and it's growing faster than any other technology on Earth right now.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tapan. And again, my name is Ralph Moreno, and I am with MedPATH Advisory Partners. I do hope that you enjoyed this. This was very informative, again, for me, even though I've heard this several times. There's always some new value that I get out of it. So thank you again, Tapan. And this concludes our production.
Thank you, Ralph. Like I said, again, I appreciate the discussion here, and I've been very pleased with the partnership we've had so far, and looking forward to doing a lot of work together.
I'm hoping we can solve some problems. That's for definite sure. You have a great one. Thank you, guys.